Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. This morning we have a very special guest with us. We have Miss Lauren Kaufman. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
Doing well. We're really excited to chat with you a little bit today.
The
Good
feeling is
morning.
mutual.
Excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. It's quite the honor.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, why don't we get started? Can you tell us a little bit about your story so far?
Sure. The trajectory of my career and my growth and development as an educator, human being, and leader is quite the gift. Uh, this dates back to when I was a little girl. I come from a family of educators. My parents are educators. My sister's an educator. So this goes back a long time. My passion for education and seeing, I have big love for educators actually because of that. Because I always used to see my parents connecting with their students and bringing home their work and talking so beautifully about their students. So this goes back a long time. And then I've had so many great mentors and teachers along my journey who've really been lanterns and guides who have really showed me the way. So this started at a very, very young age where I had this curiosity for learning and education and growth. So my journey as an educator, well, this is going to be my 19th year in education. I feel so lucky to say that. I started my career as a teaching assistant. I was a classroom teacher for the Department of Education in New York City. I taught second and fifth grade. I've been a reading specialist for middle school and elementary school. I've been an instructional coach. That was a really special role that I served in for quite some time. And then I took the leap into a formal leadership role and I served as an assistant principal. And now I'm a district leader. So it's been quite the journey. And what's beautiful about it is that I've served in so many roles. So I really try to lead with an empathetic lens because I've lived in those roles. So when I'm working with teachers now and administrators and community members, I really do try to work with people and step into their shoes and understand what they're living. So I look to myself as more of, even though I'm in a formal leadership role, I'm more of a thought partner. I love working with people to move some really important priorities forward. And at the heart of everything are the kids. That's why we're here, right?
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I liked what you said at the end about feeling more like a thought partner. Do you think that is makes it easier for you to have those relationships with the people you work with? Like there's maybe less stress or something like that?
I think so. I think that we are human beings first at our core, and getting to know people, getting to know what they're about, getting to know their interests, and really starting there, I think breaks down that barrier of, administrator and teacher. I am here working with you, and we are here to share ideas. And I think what I have learned over the course of my journey is how important it is to also invite other perspectives into the conversation because I think earlier in my career, I was more like thinking, this is the way. My way is the way. I will tell you earlier on in my career, but as I've evolved as a person and an educator, I just come to realize that we need everybody to have a seat at the table because when you have different perspectives around you and you act as a thought partner, uh, people get you to see things possibly in a different way. in a way that you haven't seen it before. So I really like that. I look at everybody as a thought partner and as another puzzle piece. Every time we put another puzzle piece, we get to see the big picture, forming and really
Mm.
priorities coming to fruition that way.
And I think that's part of growth too. When you first start out in leadership roles, we feel that pressure and feel like, well, we're ultimately responsible or accountable. So, like you said, it's our way. We have to do it our way. And I think as we grow and mature and realize, hey, five people in the room know more than I do by myself. And so, getting that input, we can make the best available decision, which really is what good leadership is about anyway, is making getting the most information and being able to make the best decision possible. So, yeah, I think that's something that I guess we learn as we get older, like you said, but I think it's so important for new leaders to hear that too, so that they don't feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders.
Yeah, I think a big part of that too is, I talked about before leading with that empathetic lens, but also showing vulnerability in that process that we are all human and we want to feel calm and capable, but we're going to make mistakes along the way. So I think owning your mistakes too, and being able to show that just because you are in this leadership role, and you make a decision, that maybe you make the decision that wasn't the best decision, but if you live in that state of reflection with people and you're able to talk through it and really own that, I think that really helps develop relationships and cultivate connection in your school communities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's all just very true. The ability to, admit that you've made a mistake and have that transparency. It's so important in leadership. So, can you tell us about maybe some of your other qualities that you think have led to your success as a leader?
Sure. I always find it strange to talk about myself because it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I think what I'll do, how I'll approach this question is the qualities that I've seen in others that have been illuminated in me. So I have taken on over the course of my journey qualities based on my interactions, whether they're favorable or unfavorable interactions. You need those unfavorable interactions too to shape you into the person you are. So I would say that I am quite the passionate person. I really love what I do. I love education. I love my family, who they're a big part of what I do. My kids, they're always showing me the way. I'm fully in it. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, so
Oh,
you
wow.
know, yeah, yeah. So they teach me a lot through the process too, how to be patient and have perseverance. I think that's another quality is you've got to learn how to see things through, and you start things sometimes, and barriers and obstacles get in the way, and some setbacks. But if you can work through that, that's really important. So I'm very dedicated and committed and loyal to what I do also, and I'm also a learner. I love to I'm constantly looking for books and articles and podcasts to learn and to grow, because and not only limited to education. I think if we limit what we consume just to education, then I don't think that's going to help. I think you need other perspectives too. What's really going on in the
Absolutely.
world, because that helps us as leaders, as educators, make those connections, because that's really what we're doing. We're preparing these our kids, for the real world and jobs that don't even exist yet. So I would say I'm curious. I'm very open to learning, very open to connection. And these are just all of the things that other people have shown me along the way. They've been lanterns for me, just kind of guiding me, and they made me who I am.
Yeah, one of the things you just mentioned is trouble talking about yourself, and that is a trait we see, and we talked about in our books about high agreeableness. You're kind, you're empathetic, you're always other focused, but not self focused. And one of the things that I share, especially when I talk with teachers, is, if I was to ask any one of them to stand up and share like their top five strengths, they would probably struggle to tell me one. But if I ask them what are the strengths of their teammate, they can tell me those really quick. And so it's so interesting that we can see those traits and those strengths in other people, but sometimes we have trouble seeing them within ourselves. But I think it is good to reflect on it from time to time and realize that, hey, we do, I do have these strengths and abilities, and, I use them to be more successful.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, I definitely have qualities that I can
Oh, we
improve
all
on
do.
as
Yeah.
well. I tend, yeah, for sure. I just think that I think though those qualities that might not be perceived as positive in our own minds, they're actually important too. Like I said before, like the unfavorable interactions that we have, they help us to learn and to grow. So I think the same about our own qualities that we don't embrace as much. Those are important too.
So you mentioned being a lifelong learner and going outside of education to find helpful content. Is there anything that you would recommend outside of education for administrators and teachers?
Well, I love learning about people and what makes people happy,
Mm,
because I think that's at the heart of the work. So I am a huge fan of David Brooks' How to Know a Person. I've been
mm.
reading that book recently as a very, very slow read. There's so much goodness in that book to bring. And it's not necessarily education focused at all, it's for anybody. And Sean Acker's book, Big Potential, has also been a really big influence on me lately in terms of what makes people happy. And he talks all about the importance of collaboration and the ability to have those
Mhm.
interpersonal skills and work as a team to drive priorities forward. So those are a couple of the books off the top of my head. I also am a big fan of Ryan Holiday. The Obstacle is the Way. Um, he says, obstacles are just, they could be setbacks, but the obstacle really is the way. It helps us when we move past those obstacles and setbacks. It helps us row to our destination. So those are some books that off the top of my head that I really
And it
Beautifully
seems
appreciate.
like
shared.
those are kind of relationship focused too, which, I think is the most important. If you don't know who you're leading, how can you lead them? So and it's good to get fresh perspectives, like you said, because I've always been the mindset good leadership's good leadership, regardless of what field it's in. And so we can take, from different areas and find what we can utilize and works with us to be even more effective. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Sure, sure. It's interesting. You just made me think about when I took on this K-12 role that I'm in right now. I didn't have as much experience at the high school level, but I think what you said before about knowing people and getting to know who they are, how they teach, bringing those practices, those strong instructional practices from the elementary, from the middle level to the high school, it's really the same thing. It's just different content. So I think that definitely needs to be at the core, because you can lack in experience on paper in one area, but you can bring so much more in the different
Yeah,
facets of who
absolutely.
you are.
Mhm. Can you speak for a second on some of the challenges you have faced in your leadership roles?
Sure. You know, I guess I'll speak about having tough conversations or crucial conversations with people that you really care about. Sometimes, when you're leading, you're you're having this tug of war with your head and your heart. And your head says one thing and your heart says another thing, but at the end of the day, you're thinking of the bigger picture. And throughout my leadership journey, which hasn't really even been that long, I just finished up my third year as an administrator. So I've been more, on the front lines, as a teacher and as a coach. But so for me, it was a big learning curve to have those difficult conversations with people you really care about, and try to articulate what you want to convey, in a very caring, emotional, but also in a direct way. Because I think it's important to um, really say what you mean and be clear with it, and not really sugarcoat, for lack of a better word, what's really happening. But I think if you lead with your heart, think with your head, state the what you're talking about, why you're talking about it, and what's going to happen and how it's going to happen after that. I think people at the end, and hopefully people will know that you have good intentions, um, within those
Yeah, I think that's an
conversations.
important part of it is that they trust you in that process. And it kind of goes back to the high agreeableness. Most people hate conflict. They think of it as a four-letter word and do everything they can to avoid it. And the reality is, though, like you said, when you handle it the right way and you work through the process, focusing on the issue and not emotions and the individual and things like that, usually you can come to a good resolution. It's kind of like I always use the illustration of being married. You know, you're going to have conflict. If you don't and you avoid it, you're going to let it build up to, it's something even major. And at that point, you're going to argue and fuss about everything at that point. And the goal then is just to win the fight, not to resolve the issue. So yeah, I like how you did that, and I like how you said like the struggle between the heart and the mind, but you know, think or feel with your heart, but think with your mind, so that you work through that process the right way.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's something I will continue to struggle with, because I consider myself a person that does have such a big heart. But I've learned in leadership that sometimes it's just best to address things head on. And I feel, I just keep telling myself in my head, because education is hard, right? But it's incredibly gratifying. At the end of the day, it's the most important role on the planet, wherever you're serving within an organization, because you're impacting the hearts and minds of kids, the future leaders of tomorrow, right? So, at the end of the day, it's worth it. And even if things don't go as planned, even if I'm having a conversation or an interaction where, I'll look at it, I'll look back and I'll say, that really didn't go as I intended, or I wish that it could have gone like this. I think that's an important part, is the reflection in that. And the growth that you have for yourself. And I think it's okay to circle back with people too. If things don't go the way you had intended, sometimes you do have to circle back. You don't want to leave that open ended, because then it just doesn't feel right. And then there are some things that you do have to leave a little bit open, unfortunately. But the heart is always in the right place, with the head connected. So,
So, we're really interested to hear some about your book. Can you tell us a little bit about the leader inside?
sure. I feel like in this
Hmm.
conversation, we already talked a lot about what is at the core of this book, The Leader Inside: Stories of Mentorship to Inspire the Leader Within. That's the whole title. And it really is this collection of stories that shows how our actions can positively impact others, and that we have people that are on our path, who take a piece of you with them, and you take a piece of them with you. And that impact and influence can be infinite. And I really do believe that the core of this book really talks about the heartbeat of education, how it lives inside the walls of schools and our organizations. And within those walls, you find kids and leaders and families in the mess of learning. So, the first part of this book is about the path to leadership. I have 5 contributors in this book, and I did that very purposefully. I selected these contributors. I know them all personally and professionally because they have been a big influence on how I lead. And they've been mentors and guides for me. So it was really important to have other voices here. So that first part of the book is all about our different stories and our paths to leadership. And no path is linear or the same. Within each part of this book, I include some really awesome books and articles and podcast quotes. I use a lot of stories and metaphors so people can connect to what I'm talking about, and then I have actionable ideas that you can implement tomorrow at the end of each chapter. So people can think about, okay, this is how it worked for Lauren, but how does this look in my world, right? The second part of the book is all about mentorship and how mentorship matters. I was the mentor coordinator in my former district. So I talk about all in this chapter about ways to implement a successful mentor program where we can set teachers on build a strong foundation for teachers so they have long, meaningful careers. And I provide some really actionable ideas for school districts and leaders and teachers alike within that chapter. And then the third chapter is stories of impact and courage. A little bit about what we were talking about before, just how courage really leads you through to do these really important things. And, I really feel that there are gifts that live within exceptional educators, and they're just waiting to be unwrapped in the right place at the right time with the right people. And I hopefully take the readers through. I almost want the readers, I talk right to the readers in the book, and I want to take them through this journey from the beginning to the end of the book with me. And I want them to know that I believe in them, that no matter where your path leads you, that there is a leader inside waiting to be discovered, so that they can then pay it forward and do that for somebody else.
Several of the people we've interviewed talked about that they had mentors that along the way that saw something, and it goes back to what you had mentioned early on that sometimes we don't see in ourselves. But they, mentioned that they had mentors that saw something in them and encouraged them to take that next step or to, move to that next level. And they probably wouldn't have without that mentor and that encouragement. So you're right. That is such an important piece of the puzzle of, like you said, developing into our best potential.
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I quote Simon Sinek, his book, The Infinite Game, in this book, and he talks about in his book how it's really exciting to know that there's a team, an invisible team of people that you don't even know yet. So we have mentors from our past, mentors from our present, and then it's exciting to think about people you haven't even met yet that are going to make a significant impact on you and be a part of your team. So I talk a lot about that in the book as well, and to look for those people, and then to use, as I mentioned earlier, um, I think the hardest feeling to overcome, I can speak for myself, is that feeling of disappointment when when you're living your life, whether it's personally or professionally, right? There are some things that happen that really open that feeling of disappointment up, and I think that's a feeling I really had to work through and adjust my expectations along the way, but also recognize too that within that, I think people don't ever intentionally mean to do something um, to hurt anybody. I just think everybody has a very different perception. Perception is reality, and that's okay. And we just have to. That's why we have to get to know each other and understand one another. But essentially, I do talk about. My dad used to say, growing up, leadership. There's a leader inside us all that we salute the person, not the title. And that's the way I kind of lead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love that. I love that. So, can you tell us about a couple of mentors? I don't want you to give too much of the book away, but can you tell us about a couple of mentors you've had, or maybe teachers that you had growing up in the classroom that have left the biggest impact on you. Now, don't give too much away. We want our listeners to go pick this up. And actually, while I'm on that topic, where can they get a copy?
Amazon or Barnes and Noble. It's available. Yep. Thank you. Well, I think it's very easy to talk about Mrs. Linda Roth, who I mentioned in this book. She's a contributor in the book. She was my fourth grade teacher. She retired as an assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And I tell many stories about her in the book. She's kind of woven in throughout, but there is a section in the book where we have an interaction, which I think is very special and unique about the book. And when 30 years had gone by since I had spoken to Linda, and when I was preparing for my leadership interviews, I had picked up the phone and called her and asked her if she would help me. And she said yes right away. And since then, we stay in touch pretty much every week. We check in on each other. And when we discussed what that would look like in the book, it's kind of a cool back and forth interaction that we have with some surprises in there, which I won't give away in case anybody wants to read the book. But why she became such an important person in my life is when at a very young age, when I was a shy, timid girl and struggled a little bit in my learning, she made me feel calm, capable, and confident. She always said, "You're a leader, Lauren. You can do this." And that always stayed with me. I always felt like her teaching was very innovative. She really got to know her students. Um, she used to walk around with teacher resource books that I was dying to know what they were. And as a matter of fact, I had my parents for the holidays order me some of those books as a fourth grade girl, books that were for teachers because I wanted to emulate what Mrs. Roth was doing and highlight in the book. And I wanted to see what was so cool about that book. One of the authors, Nancy Atwell, who I look to a lot for literacy education. I had gone to a conference of hers maybe about like 15 years ago. I was so excited. And I actually told her this story of how my fourth grade teacher walked around with this book. She was inspired by you. I had the book since I was in fourth grade, and she was like, "Wait, what? You have this book? You're 10 years old and you're carrying around this book?" And I said, "Well, I think the writing was on the wall. I was meant to be in education, so that's someone I could speak about. I've had so many people on my journey who have been in my corner, who have supported me all the way through, and they know who they are if they're listening to this podcast right now, because I always make it a point to tell people, I try to, how much they mean to me and show gratitude. And I also just want to say that the contributors in this book were a huge inspiration for me. And I hope that people can connect with their stories as well, because it feels a little different reading their words because they have different voices. But I think that's the cool part about this book.
And that's so true. And it is with social media and everything today, like I always try to encourage teachers because, my thing is you're the difference maker, you're impacting their lives. But if you're able to reach back out to some, the teachers that influenced you, and so I'm usually older than everybody I speak to anyway. So, but I'm like, even I was able to reach out, on social media and connect. In fact, in one of my PD sessions, my first grade teacher came to it. And, it was just so cool because I was able to connect with her and several of them, like you said, along the way, to connect with them on social media and things like that and tell them thank you, which is so important. I tell teachers that the students, you influence their life whether they tell you or not, but it is kind of special when you get told it. It just makes a big difference. So thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful.
Aw. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? I mean every word I say with that. And I hope that resonates with people in the book because I really feel that was such a special part of the book for me, is having her voice amplified the way she amplified my voice when I was a child and even now as an adult.
Yeah, it's kind of like a way to give a tribute to her for that. Yeah, I mean, that's just very meaningful.
Yeah, and now it's memorialized in a book forever. I had it in my mind, but now it's memorialized. And I should mention about this book is that I had been blogging for about 4 years prior to publishing this book, and if it wasn't for the blogging and George Carlos inspiring me to blog many years ago, this book wouldn't have been possible because that gave me the confidence to
Yeah.
put my ideas out into the world. And then, I try to blog weekly. It's something I love to do. Some people, to calm them down, they do yoga or they go on a hike or paint. For me, it's my writing. If I'm not reflecting on my learning weekly, I start getting a little anxious, So it really grounded, it grounds me, and it also helped me weave together the story for this book because it's kind of cool that when you do publish a blog and put it out there, I actually don't do it for recognition at all or likes or reposts or anything like that. I do it really for myself. And then, but it is interesting through that process. It's been like a bonus for me to connect with so many educators along the way, to have someone say, "Oh, I read that blog and that was such a cool idea," and how it impacted them. And I'm sure you might feel that way about your work and people you've touched, because I know that you have touched so many educators, including myself, Dr. Johnson. So that's really cool.
So yeah, writing is just so important. It's a great way to express emotion, to sort your thoughts. I mean, there's just so many benefits to that. So that's really great. And you actually answered my next question by talking about that. I was going to ask how you take care of yourself, how you de-stress. Do you have any other do you have any other methods or hobbies that you
Sure. You know what? I love to walk. I like being around nature. I live in a beach town, so I, you know, will take to the boardwalk here, or being outside with music. It just helps me wind down, and it also helps me think and connect things that I've learned or things that I have to do. It gives me ideas. So I love doing that. I do like some relaxing time. I do like to take vacations, and especially going out to California, where I used to, I spent a great deal of time in my young 20s, and I visit with friends there, and I love being around friends and family, going out to good dinners, enjoying conversation. I don't do anything too crazy, but taking in a good 80s movie, I love that. I'm a child of the 80s, so these are all things that I like to do, but it's the people who surround me and just being with them. It's less about the place, and more about the people I'm with. So, I could be anywhere, and if I'm with people that I adore and who energize me, then I'm in a good place. But I also have to say that being alone is really important for me too, because I'm an introvert at heart. So I get a lot of my energy from being in my own space, as
And
well.
that's where the writing comes in too. Yeah, you're alone, you're by
Yeah.
yourself, and you can work through all that. So that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I don't know if I'm an introvert, but I like to be alone. And I really do think that's it, just to process things. I don't know if I really, because I'm not sure really how you define that anyway. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. When you're around the right people, it's great. But when you're alone, it's not because some people never like to be alone. I'm like, I enjoy that time. So, it's
Me too. It's actually, people get surprised when I say I'm an introvert, because it's not that I'm still very outgoing when I'm around people. So I think people mistake that, and they say, and when I'm presenting, right, at a conference, or I'm doing a professional learning session, which is a big part of my life and a big part of my job, I also know that I need to be in that space right now, and I need to give that all I've got, and I'm going to give the attention to it, to the people, to the presentation, to the interactions that are happening, and I'm very engaged, as I'm sure you are, Dr. Johnson. But the introvert in me, after that happens, I kind of need that alone time to recharge before I can
Right.
do the
Yeah.
next thing. And that's what I mean by being an introvert. So it's still, I'm engaging with people and I appear to be very extroverted in those situations, but I'm okay with that alone time,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
I'm right there with you. So I totally get what you're saying. All right. So we have one more hard question for you. Well, then I think Jeremy will have a
Okay.
general one for you. But so this is called Lattes and Leaders. So what is your hot beverage of choice? Is it coffee, cappuccino, latte, tea, nothing? What is it?
Coffee, of course. Oh my goodness. I actually have my coffee here. This is like my third cup. I have my third cup today. I don't know what I would do without coffee. I don't know if that's like a bad thing to say, but I love a good cup of coffee, and it's usually not fancy or anything. I just have some almond milk or skim milk and call it a day. No fancy coffee, but it keeps me going. What about you, Dr. Johnson? What do you like?
I'll drink coffee, not every day, but most mornings I'll drink a cup of coffee with just a little creamer in it. If I'm traveling
All
and
right.
it's easy access, I don't go out on my way, but I do like it's called a chai latte. It's a real
Oh,
spicy type,
okay.
herb type tasting latte. So I do like it. And then my thing is, and I don't probably shouldn't brag about it because it's so bad for you, but my thing is monster drinks, the energy drinks. So I drink way too many of
Oh,
them.
yeah. Well, I understand why you might have to, because you have to keep yourself, energized. But yeah, that I haven't gotten into. I think I'll stick to the coffee, caffeinated coffee. It'll keep me
Yeah.
going.
Oh, yeah. That,
So,
I think it's funny because, all the memes and you always hear the jokes that, educators, teachers run on coffee. And I think there's, there's something to that.
right. Well, you have your morning coffee. So I have my coffee on the way to work. That's coffee one. Then I get to work. That's coffee two. And this is not a great thing that I'm saying, I'm sharing. But then you've got coffee three, which is around like 3 o'clock, because you've got to, at least in the role that I serve in, you're doing your after school
Mm,
meetings and your PD sessions and all of that. So you need your extra wave of energy. But I try not to do anything after that, because then I'll be wired and I won't be able to sleep. So that's not a good thing. But there are days that I try to limit it. I keep an eye on that, but I do love a good hot cup of coffee.
excellent.
All right. So before we wrap up here, are there any pearls of wisdom you want to leave for educators?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank educators for
Mm,
all you do for education, for the kids, for your colleagues in the community you serve. You have a really important job, and we're so grateful that you've chosen this noble career, this noble profession that's so gratifying. And, I ask you that you continue to keep an open mind and that you discover the gifts in other people and notice and name those gifts, because people need to hear what they're really good at. And in turn, I'm hoping that those people will pay it forward and
mm.
recognize other people's gifts. And then the cycle continues. There's a leader inside of us all. And I think if we work together to help people see that, we're in a great place for kids and for education.
Yeah. What a great thought. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that was very well said, and
You bet.
we look forward to picking up a copy of your book. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Well,
you.
it's been it's been a
That means a
pleasure talking to
lot.
you today, and hope to have you back on soon. This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.